This morning, I'm glad to be back with you. I'm very excited to be here. Last week I was away. I went up to a church that I planted a long time ago and went to be with them and just to fellowship with them. And it was quite a remarkable turn of events, just seeing what exists now. But it actually made me think more about us than anything else and the future. And I was really thankful Len had a message last week, and I was able to play that back and bring me back into where we're at and what's going on and different things. And I was really, really glad about that. So thanks, Len. Yeah. Now, a long time ago, my mum said to me, "John, you need to paint pictures." And so Mum got me thinking, and I wasn't much of a painter, but it ended up becoming part of my life, and I've never painted faces. That's not really my thing at all. But I felt like for Mother's Day I was going to paint this face. Now this is a real person, but I need you to help me. I don't want you to critique the painting. What I want you to do is tell me who this is. Tell me what she's thinking. Just tell me what's going through your mind when you look at this person here. If you can help me, I need you to help me. Anybody got any? Let's have any starters. It's who is it? Worry. Okay. She's worried. Definitely thinking. She's concerned. She's uncertain. Looking for a future. Okay. In her head. Yeah, she's just, looking ahead. Okay. You're missing someone. What do you guys think? Anybody else? Yeah. Tash? She's watching something? She might have regrets. Help me out with that one. I missed that. That sounded good. No, that's good. I think you've done really well. But it's amazing how in life we'll look at somebody and think we know a little bit about them. Like even people that will come in here. From time to time, you can look at somebody and take it sort of just a bit of a guesstimate. People often will say to me, "What do you do?" And I know the minute I say what I do, they've already got an assessment of who I am. They've established in their mind, who I am. Well, I have no idea what's going through this lady's mind. I just painted the picture. But there's a story behind it. Cammie, bless her soul, she's having to ride around Western Australia in helicopters and boats and, look at ravines and waterfalls, and it's terrible. She's working really hard and it's an awful thing, but somebody has to do it. And anyway, we'll be thinking about Cammie this morning. We moved to Hollywood. And I was often off doing different things in different places, and Cammie was there. She worked really hard in her industry, and she does. She works, honestly, I don't know anybody that works any harder than Cammie. And she was working really hard. But she connected with all these different people. And while I was away doing different things, I'd come back and our house would have more people in it. And it just grew. And she had a home group, but it was all these young ladies would be at our house. And she became like a surrogate mum. And often what would happen in Hollywood, there were people there, young people, that they could go back to their mothers at Thanksgiving and Christmas. They could go back and have their holidays with their families. But there were many that could not. And somehow or other, Cammie played this role. And I think it's, when we're thinking about church and we're thinking about future, and you're thinking about your own life, right? I want to give you an illustration that you can remember. Too often in church, or even in life, we're thinking ladder of success. So I have to climb the ladder of success. But really, life will come down to a circle of friends. And if you see that in a church, instead of thinking in terms of how do we climb the ladder, how are you involved in a circle of friends? And I was only reminded this week just looking at what's taking place, and Len and Brad and Di, and they're all working on, this is a circle of friends. Okay, I want you to think like this, because there's something that God is doing in our lives, and He will draw you into something that has a circle of friends. And this plays a big part in our lives. One of the best times I've had at this church is Peter up the back there. He's all by himself, but we get out there and we work on stuff. And we build things and we make things. And the friendship is formed. And I'm convinced that if we would stop thinking in terms of ladder of success, but circle of friends, even the band. You know, this is the Terra Nova band, right? I thought this was like a forgotten word, forgotten term, but no, this is the name of the band, the new earth, the new land. Okay? I want to take you to a story in the Old Testament. Very, very popular story. And, you had the time of the judges. So it was after Joshua, before the kings, the time of the judges. And there's a story in the land where in Israel things got really, really bad. And Naomi and Amalek were married, and they had property. So they had a piece of land in Israel, in Judah, had a piece of property. But things got so bad they had to leave and go and live in Moab to just survive. There was a drought there, and somehow or other there must have been food in this other place. And they went there. The story goes that her two sons married two Moabite ladies, and they lived there for quite a period of time. Amalek dies. And then one by one, the sons die. And so here you've got three ladies. But Naomi, the story is about Naomi. And it was an awful situation. Here she is living in the land, God's country. And then they moved to this place, and just one problem after another. And the amount of suffering that she went through in that place. And the story goes that Ruth, she was going to come back because things had got better back in Israel and in Judah, and she's going to come back, and these two daughter-in-laws were going to come back, and one of them, Naomi's saying, like, don't come back, stay here, make a life for yourself, find a new man, I've got nothing to offer you. She was feeling miserable, all right? That's Naomi. And Ruth's saying, well, actually, I need to make sure that I come with you. And in the scriptures, I'm just going to read a couple of verses. I'm not going to read too much. But in the scriptures, it helps us to see what was going on. And there's this conversation and, takes place. But Ruth replied, "Don't urge me to leave you or turn back from you. Where you go, I will go. And where you stay, I will stay. Your people will be my people, and your God will be my God. Wherever you die, I will die there. I will be buried. May the Lord deal with me, be it ever so severely, even if death separates you and me." When Naomi realized that Ruth was determined, like she's going, like I'm coming back with you. It doesn't matter what takes place. Your people are going to be my people. Your God is going to be my. I belong to you. That was Ruth. And so she went back, and the interesting thing is that somehow or other they had property still. But Naomi couldn't lay claim to this property because of the way the system worked. In order to be able to hand on property, it came through the sons and all this sort of stuff. And but there was a contingency in place that one of the relatives could help out. And so Ruth is encouraged to go out into this field and work in this field. And she runs into the character Boaz. And Boaz is a wealthy landowner. But he's a relative. But he's not the person that can help her out. He's second in line. There's somebody else that could take care of them. And the idea is you could actually inherit this land, right? But you had to take the widow. And so this one guy was offered the deal. And they sit around like a circle of friends. And if you look at it, it was all about these people in this land welcoming back Naomi. Naomi's like, "Don't welcome me back. I'm a miserable sod. God's hand's been against me. Nothing's worked out in my life. Call me Mara because I'm bitter." That was her. But what they actually found in this circle of friends that were workers of Boaz, they found blessing. And they were drawn into this family circle, if you will. And so they would go and she would glean, she would pick up wheat. And so Boaz said, "Look, make it easier for her. Throw heaps out there so she can pick it up." And she did. And she was going back. And Naomi's like, "Ooh, this is pretty exciting. How does Boaz fit into the picture?" But she knew that he was a relative. And so she encouraged Ruth, "Well, go and sleep at his feet." It was like there was this story behind all of this. And it's the most unlikely story. Most unlikely story. And so she goes there, and then Boaz has to go through this thing where he realizes that she's pretty cute, actually. He's like this. He sees this lady. Who is that? And so he's already decided. I mean, there's an incredible line in there where it's like the most romantic line ever, right? He goes, "Come, take a piece of bread and dip it in the wine vinegar with me." Where's the romantics in the room? He's onto this. He won the girl over. So this is the story. But it turns out that Boaz talked to the relative that was supposed to be able to redeem this lady. And he goes, "Oh, do you want this land?" And the guy goes, "Yeah." Well, the widow comes with him, with the land. And they're like, "Oh, yeah, no, actually, I got things going on right now. That's not really what I want." So it falls to Boaz, and he then gets this rightful place. And then he's actually able to marry her. And so he marries Ruth. Boaz marries Ruth. So it's a love story, isn't it? It's an amazing love story. But this is Mother's Day. Okay? Naomi. Oh, the suffering, the torment, the drama she went through, losing her husband, losing her sons, losing her house, right? Coming back, and then somehow they're trying to figure out, how do I fit in with all these circles of friends? And it was a challenge. And she was drawn into this. But here's where it gets, I think, remarkable. Is the story at the end. So I'll just read this section here. So Boaz took Ruth and she became his wife. When he made love to her, the Lord enabled her to conceive. She gave birth to a son. The woman said to Naomi, "Praise be to the Lord, who this day has not left you without a guardian redeemer. May he become famous throughout Israel. He will renew your life and sustain you in your old age. For your daughter-in-law who loves you and who is better to you than 7 sons has given him birth." So this is awesome. Then Naomi took the child, and this is grandma. She's a mother. She took the child in her arms and cared for him. The women living there said, "Naomi has a son." And they named him Obed. And he was the father of Jesse, the father of David. Now Naomi had no way of knowing she's going to be the great-grandmother of King David. All I could think of is, there are times in our life where we are unaware of what goes on beyond here. And sometimes you can be in a season of life and you're thinking about God. God doesn't care about me. Things have worked out hard in my life. Or you can say there's a bigger picture. There's a picture that I do not understand. The reason why I painted this picture here, I saw it on Facebook. She's much prettier than what I've painted. But Elena was one of the orphans that Cami adopted and brought to our house. And most unlikely person, she's Russian. And being Russian in Hollywood, you're not very popular. You know, it just... And then things were difficult, and somehow or other, Cami just loved her like a daughter. And she attached herself to Cami. And it turns out that, you know, she's still there. And she still sees us as family. But it was all through a circle of friends. And I want you to look at your life now more than just the things that you can interpret. Now, who would have guessed that she was a Russian living in Hollywood and she's a model? She makes a living doing what she's doing. She's not famous. Elena Zabenkinsky. But she is somebody, and I think in this picture you got it right. I think there's something not quite, is there anything else? I mean, so she's not married. She's probably about 33 and she's thinking, I don't know. But you know what? Here's what happens in the church. Too often the church is set up for, young ladies will grow up, get married, be happy, have children, and that's their purpose in life. And it's actually not true. You will find that there's a person there. A child of God in each person. And we're living in this age right now where there's a real confusion as to mums and to women and to how they're seen in society. I suggest that they are blessed by God. And that we need to appreciate people not for what they do in life. Not everybody's going to have kids. Not everybody's going to have the life that you want them to have. But as a church, if we would welcome people into circles of friends, you don't have to be grand. You just take them as they are. Take people as they are. Because there's something extraordinary about being validated just as a person, rather than, well, when are you getting married? Why I'm thinking some of this is that, my daughter has not been able to have kids, but she's not the only one. And this sometimes is what we look at in life. On a Mother's Day, we all have mothers. Some of us don't know them. My sister never knew her mother, not her birth mother. And in the grand story of God, we actually don't know the roles that people play. And for us as a church, that we could look at the story of Naomi and Ruth and see that God has purposes, and sometimes the hardships that we go through, the attitudes that we have, we would come back to the fact that God hasn't deserted us. God is with us. And so it's the story in your life. So when we think about people and we look at this, I remember years ago I was at another church, and this young lady, she was working in some sort of an agency down at the university, and she said, "You know what, John, you just don't understand." She said, life's not about women and marriage and children. She said, "I'm single. I'm going to be single. I continue to be single. I'm going to live out my life single, and I'm going to serve God just the way I am." And it was an eye-opener for me because she said, all of your talks, you just assume things. And it was true. And so for us on Mother's Day, I want us to celebrate mums. Celebrate mums. But let's not pigeonhole people. And certainly not ladies. Little girls need to grow up knowing that there's a God that loves them. Because when you have that awareness, see, Ruth was leaving her place where it was so empty, it was so she just felt like it was just the wrong place, but your God is my God. She saw something in Naomi, all right? You don't have to overread every situation. You don't have to interpret everybody's look on their face. You don't have to know everything about somebody to love them and to welcome them into your home, welcome them into your life, and to love them. Because the story of the church is redemption, redeemer. Somebody that stood in the place of, this is my bride. The church is the bride of Christ. We belong to Christ. It doesn't have to be a ladder of success. They're saying in churches that churches are struggling. It's because they think in terms of ladder of success. They say, well, maybe we leaned it against the wrong wall. I suggest there is no wall. There's no ladder of success. There's a circle of friends. Look at Jesus. That's how he lived life. He had this circle of friends. And you play a role at different times in your life into different people's lives. Sometimes you're the one needing a mum. And sometimes you'll be the mum to a far greater circle than what you realise. I'm just going to say, let's just celebrate mums. There's heaps of cake out there. So much cake. You have to eat cake. You cannot leave here till you've eaten cake. Lots of cake. Oh, we've got gluten-free, dairy-free. We thought this through. Let me just pray. God, through your mighty ways and your many blessings, pour out your Spirit on this church. May we have this greater awareness of your incredible story. The way you work things, the way you bring things together, the way you bring lives together through circles of friends. That in this church, that you would raise up some beauty in what takes place. And that this church would be known as a church that is just beautiful as the bride of Christ. In Jesus' name, amen. Happy Mother's Day.